agenda tonight is the adoption of the fiscal year 2021 budget ordinance, and I'll call on Ms. Knighton for that, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So the budget ordinance has been prepared by Finance Officer Virginia Smith, and the ordinance reflects the changes that were discussed at the Finance Committee meeting several weeks ago. We added a $2,000 contribution to the Edenton Environmental Group. You recall there the citizen scientists who are doing terrific work, a lot of monitoring work, and they're helping to supplement the work that the state is doing on the algae bloom. So we were able to find funds for that. We also corrected a shortfall that was my fault, where I dropped a digit and we didn't have enough money to cover the health insurance for the Public Works fleet garage, but Virginia was able to figure out a way to make that work. Those are major changes that we added. Yes. So the budget's been posted on the website. You conducted your public hearing in early June. The budget does recommend a 2-cent increase from 40 cents to 42 cents, and we provided the information that Councilman Coleman asked, what the impact is dollar-wise if a property was assessed at, if a home was assessed at $75,000, the impact was an additional $15 a year. The tax bill would increase from $300 to $315 a year. If a home or a property was assessed at $150,000, their tax bill would increase by $30 a year. And then if the property were assessed at $300,000, they would see their tax bill increase by $60 a year. Mayor, I'm happy to answer questions. Oh, I did want to point out that the other change to the budget was reflecting use of fund balance to pay for the needed improvements at the waterfront. We're fortunate that FEMA has agreed to pay $138,000 to replace 5 of the 10 wave panels that help prevent the waves from, they break up the waves, prevent the waves from entering the harbor. That's what creates the safe harbor. The remaining 5 are showing signs of weakening, deteriorating. It's hard to say, the next hurricane that comes may damage them, or it could be another 5 years, it could be another 10 years. But the fact that the contractor will be here and mobilized, that is a big part of the expense. So my recommendation is that you utilize fund balance to pay for that. There's also the need to replace the pier and the wooden dock and the finger pier slips for the harbor. And that's $115,000. We're fortunate because your reserves are very healthy. You have a policy that requires, the state requires a minimum of an 8% of the previous year's general fund total budget. That is the lowest that would be allowed, but you're not anywhere near that. Our policy requires that your fund balance be at least 20% of the prior year's budget, and that would mean that we had to have a minimum of $1.2 million in reserves. You have $3.5 million in reserves. So we're not happy about, we don't like to spend reserves, but that's what reserves are for. They're there in case you need them, especially for capital projects. So you don't have to make a decision on approving those projects tonight. If you want to approve those projects at your July meeting, the budget is set up so that the funds are there. Councilman Coleman asked me earlier, if the funds are in the budget, does that mean that the project is approved? And it does not mean that. We always have to come to the council to get approval for capital projects. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we get to spend the money.
But if we award the bids, that wouldn't be until the July 13th meeting.
Yes, yes. I think you should be really proud of the level of reserves that the town has accumulated over the last couple of years. And we're hopeful that this year, as tight as the budget has been, that we may add a little bit back to the reserves as well.
And we've got almost 3 times what's required. That's really good. Says a lot for your management, Scott.
And I think that's a number we always need to look at.
Absolutely.
Because it's so strong. I'm comfortable with moving forward as proposed. I did have just one point, Anne Marie. You did a good job of explaining what the changes were to the budget from what we had previously looked at. But for those people that might not have been tuned in to our last meeting when we gave the reasons for the tax increase, can you just give some real quick talking points for those people that may have missed that?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have included that in my remarks, Councilman. The main reason that I recommended the 2-cent tax increase has to do with a couple reasons. One, the North Carolina local government retirement system is managed by a board of trustees. And the board of trustees mandated that local governments increase the contribution that you all make to each employee's retirement plan. That increase went from 8% to 13.9%. It was a significant increase. It was the biggest increase that I've seen at one time. But I think we estimated that increase was impacting the general fund budget by about $55,000. The other main reason had to do with the impacts from COVID on the overall economy. You know, the interest rate has been reduced so much that we're practically getting nothing, earning nothing on all that money you have in reserves. We normally would budget around $35,000 a year in income from interest earned. But with the interest rates being next to nothing, everybody's shaking their head, next to nothing, we earned next to nothing. So we have to make up for that loss of almost $35,000 in the upcoming budget year.
So basically 2 things that were out of our control.
Yes, yes.
And I just want to thank Jimmy Smith for all the hard work and putting his budget together. There's quite a few line items you had to move around. You did a good job, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just one question. And we have this salary schedule. Is that part of the budget or is that a separate issue? I have a couple questions on that.
Sure, that is part of the budget ordinance, and we're
Okay.
happy to answer questions.
Yeah. Now, I want to be too emotional, but we're in the process of beginning a search for a new town manager. And I think we know it's going to be impossible to get someone with the work ethic and the knowledge that our current town manager has, which makes me think we're going to need a lot more staff support for the new person coming in, particularly from the assistant town manager and from the planning director. And then looking at this, these numbers on what the grade classification is, it seems like both those positions are lower than it should be. Assistant town manager at 21 and town planner at 24. I would certainly think that they should be raised 5 numbers each, given the importance to the town in the coming months and thinking about their future with the town.
So, Well, I agree. I mean, they are extremely important resources to not only the manager, but to you all and to the town operations. Tammy, what would you recommend? Should we look at, maybe do a market survey for those two positions and come back with a recommendation, or?
Well, you could also look at the league survey that they do and compare it to what our numbers are.
Didn't we do that a year or so ago? We did a survey on the
Our,
salaries and whatever.
we did it in 2018, that's when we adopted the current policy what we have.
Time passes so fast.
It does, it does. And actually, the recommendation was, after so many years, which is this year, that we update the schedule, and that's what we were doing. But we're happy to look at that and look at the league's survey and come back at the July 13th meeting with a recommendation for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Anne Marie on this subject? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the budget as proposed.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of adopting the budget, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We now have a budget. Okay, the next is case number CUP 21-02, a conditional use permit application from Thomas Gandy for the construction of a business leasing climate-controlled self-storage units on a portion of property located at 1100 North Oakland Street. And PIN number is 7805-16-93-3439. Mr. Gandy, I welcome you at this time, and the council also has attorney Hood Ellis here to assist us with any comments and questions at this time. So, Tom, it's your show.
I think the first thing.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Look,
That's okay.
I'm sorry. You were
That's all
hiding
right.
behind that chair over
Well,
there.
Virginia and I had to switch seats. We had to play a little musical chairs. So, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. And in your packet this evening, you received both Mr. Gandy's application and supporting materials, as well as my staff report and the minutes from the June 7th Planning Board meeting. And I'd ask that we be able to enter those items into the record officially for this case. And as usual, I'm going to go through some of the dry, wordy stuff about the application, and then give you the opportunity to ask me questions, and then I'll introduce the applicant to give you some more of the interesting details. The mayor is correct. This is case number CUP 2102, a conditional use permit application from Thomas K. Gandy for the construction of a business leasing climate-controlled self-storage units on a portion of property located at 1100 North Oakham Street. You can see the parcel number noted in your packet, and the property is total area 7.94 acres. The existing zoning is industrial warehouse, IW. It's currently a vacant parcel, undeveloped. The surrounding land use and zoning to the north, property is developed and zoned both highway commercial and industrial warehouse, and you may be familiar that that's the UPS site to the north. To the south, the property is developed, zoned R5 residential, and that's the location of the new Edenton Housing Authority. To the east, the property is developed, zoned R5 residential. After you cross the railroad tracks, you can find single-family homes on Coke Avenue. To the west, the property is developed, R5 residential, as the neighborhood area known as North Edenton, with both single-family and multifamily residences. The existing land use classification of 1100 North Oakham Street is vacant or unbuilt land. The future land use classification for the property in our 2018 Edenton Show 1 land use plan is industrial. The Edenton Chowan Land Use Plan denotes the following as a priority of the town of Edenton and Chowan County: land use compatibility, and identifies the following goals related to land use compatibility. Goal LU4, to establish local development policies that balance protection of natural resources in fragile areas with economic development. And goal LU5, to develop policies that provide clear direction to assist local decision-making and consistency findings for zonings, divisions of land, and public and private projects. The 2018 Land Use Plan identifies a policy objective that is related to these applicable goals. That's policy LU25 that states, when reviewing proposals for new industrial development or industrial zoning, including energy generating facilities, the town of Edenton and Chowan County will ensure that the proposals are compatible with the surrounding land uses and that identified adverse impacts are mitigated. The zoning history for this parcel was noted as none on record. However, I did get information from Mr. E.C. Toppin on our planning board that he recalls when Mr. Evans, Wallace Evans, was on the planning board talking about establishing zoning for this particular area of town and designating it as industrial at that time. I'm not real sure when that was, maybe early 90s, late 80s. Guessing. The applicable regulations of the UDO are Article 4, permits and final plat approval, Article 9, zoning districts and zoning maps, Article 10, permissible uses and permissible use table, and Article 11, supplementary use regulations. You can, Tammy, do you mind scrolling down to show the overhead? So you all are pretty familiar with this parcel, I'm sure. It is within the town limits. Municipal water and sewer services are available. Town protection services are available. The property has approximately 499.13 feet of frontage on North Oakham Street and 706.4 feet of frontage on Walker Street. As I noted, it is currently undeveloped. The application before you is requesting partial development of the property for the operation of a self-storage warehouse business in the industrial warehouse district. The town of Edenton's Unified Development Ordinance allows for the operation of such a business through the conditional use permit process in the IW Industrial Warehouse Zoning District. Now, a bit of a note here. Over the weekend, Anne-Marie and I were in consultation with our town attorney regarding the fact that this application is proposing development of about 1.9 acres of the entire 7.9 acre parcel. So there'll be a site plan in a minute that'll be shown that shows that in depth. The question we had for the attorneys was whether the conditional use permit application as presented applies to the entire parcel, the entire 7 acres, or just that particular proposed developed area. The advice we received is that the conditional use permit goes with the entire acreage as proposed, meaning that we are reviewing Mr. Gandy's application to develop that portion for self-storage, but the conditional use permit goes with the entire acreage. So future development of areas not identified in the plat or the site plan would have to come back before the planning board and council for review separately, because right now what's being reviewed is just what is being presented. Okay, and I'll be happy to answer questions on that later. The conditional use permit process requires applicants to specify the exact proposed use of land and allows the town council to place restrictions on the actual development. This is an appropriate planning mechanism. And when granting a conditional use permit, appropriate reasonable requirements may be added to the permit in addition to any specified below. You'll note I've included a portion of our use table here in your staff report. And if you look over to the far right of the table, you'll see IW, which is the zoning classification. I've highlighted in red warehouse self-storage, but you note that there are lots of other uses that fall either under conditional use or special use, or Z, zoned use by right, in that same category. For instance, moving and storage service, or outside bulk storage non-hazardous, are both zoned uses by right, which would only be administrative review through my office in the industrial warehouse classification. However, this one is conditional use, and that's why we're here this evening. The planning board met on June 7th to consider the application and voted nearly unanimously, 5-1, to approve the application as presented with staff recommended conditions, and they asked for further information and input from town staff regarding the impact of the development on Walker Street. Today, I heard back from our Public Works Director and our Fire Chief, who were two that I particularly asked to take a look at that, the traffic impact, ingress and egress, and also the ability to provide services. And it came to light that there's not a hydrant with a water line existing, that one would have to be a line would have to be installed to connect to a hydrant. So that is something to consider, and maybe something to note in review of this application. The applicant, Mr. Gandy, has attempted to address the conditions in his attached application. Ms. Kim Hamby with the Timmons Group is also here with him for your meeting tonight. Just as a reminder, the 4 criteria that the town council must vote affirmatively on in any conditional use permit application are the following. 1, that it will not endanger the public health or safety. 2, that the application as presented will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. 3, that the application as presented will be in harmony with the area in which it is located. And 4, that it will be in conformity with the land use plan, thoroughfare plan, or other plan officially adopted by the town council. Staff finds that the proposed use is compatible with the Edenton future land use map. It identifies the Edenton future land use map in our land use plan, identifies this parcel and the surrounding areas as suitable for industrial use. Yes, Tammy, if you'll go show that map. So this is the copy of the map from our land use plan. You can see the property is underneath the blue star. It is classified on our future land use map as industrial. Areas classified as an industrial occupy around 10% of the town's planning jurisdiction and are located primarily north of downtown and in areas surrounding the airport. The classification identifies land intended for industrial and manufacturing establishments, more intensive commercial uses, as well as service and businesses which support industrial land uses are also appropriate in the industrial classification. Now finally, the staff finds that all applicable regulations of the UDO and all staff concerns that are relevant to this development have been identified, and we ask that council consider the following conditions. 1, that all necessary traffic improvements, utility installations and connections, that includes electric, water, and sewer built to town standard, and could include this installation of a line for fire safety. And drainage and or stormwater detention improvements shall be installed by and all associated and required fees borne by the developer. 2, that stormwater and drainage plans shall meet any required North Carolina Division of Environmental Quality regulations. 3, that a landscape buffer yard be installed along Walker Street and North Oakham Street in accordance with the town of UDO's requirements for the shielding of residential districts from commercial or industrial uses. The final landscape plan should be reviewed and approved by the Town of Edenton Tree Committee. And finally, that 4, all details or improvements, including but not limited to facade, signage, infrastructure, sidewalks, landscaping, and street lighting, be installed or constructed according to the UDO requirements. That concludes my staff report, save a statement on land use plan compatibility that's at the end. But that comes up at your point of voting and discussion. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Elizabeth,
Yes, sir.
I've been getting calls for a couple of weeks now about this issue. The people that's located in North Edenton do not want this. They would like to see the land used for something else beside a storage area. If I can remind the town council that a few years ago on the outskirts of Edenton, somebody wanted to put up those sun things, and they were going to put all this buffer and all this around it. It's about a mile out of Edenton, and the council voted no, because it was an eyesore coming into Edenton. He's got a storage area and a UPS already in that area. 4th Ward is my ward. I've got storage area out on Hereford Road. They don't want it, I don't want it. What can we do to stop this? What can we do to get this land rezoned so no commercial can go into it?
Better defer that to the town attorney.
I mean, you can initiate, the council could direct the staff to initiate a zoning ordinance amendment to advertise just like anybody else who, ask the council to rezone a piece of property. You could initiate that in-house if you wanted to. But that doesn't do anything for tonight. In other words, tonight you've got this application before you, and, you're gonna listen to the evidence, evaluate it, and vote up or down on it. And then, if it fails and you wanna rezone the property, you can ask staff to initiate that.
Okay. Suppose by some chance it's voted up, can I still get it rezoned?
Probably not. I mean, you could probably get it rezoned, but it would still be able to go forward as a non-conforming use.
Right. Or you could rezone the remainder of what's not developed through this permit.
So if it's voted for, he can put up a storage area. But if I can get it rezoned, he can't put anything else up out there?
In other words, I think that's what Elizabeth's saying, is that it's an 8-acre tract, and if he only puts up his conditional use, if he only puts up his storage on one part of it and it gets rezoned, then other than using the property for storage, he'd have to comply with whatever the rezoning was.
Going back to the application, did the fire chief make any comment to you about ingress and egress of emergency vehicles into the entrance?
He's on the call? Well, great. Fire Chief Bass, I'm happy to have you answer that.
Okay, Mayor and Council, I don't see any problem getting in on that street. It's a one-way street going in. It has a big enough access turning in. There's enough room between each building. We can get apparatus up and down each side. I don't see any problem with the egress on our end. The only thing I requested Elizabeth look at the fire hydrant. The closest one we have is about 525 feet from where the driveway potentially would be to 3rd Street. That's the closest hydrant, which is on the corner of 3rd and Oakland. And again, it's time sensitive. I know a neighboring community had one a few years ago that caught on fire and they lost 13 units before they get a water supply hooked up. So that's why I'm looking at the hydrant being closer on Walker Street, so we'll have quicker access to the facility in case something does happen.
So what I'm hearing, then fire hydrant would be an additional condition.
Yes, it does sound like that. And that it probably could be included under one of those conditions, but it would be wise to be specific and spell that out.
Elizabeth, assuming that happens, assuming that we put that as one of the conditions, who would actually be responsible for paying for the installation of that fire hydrant? Would it be the town, or would it be the,
It would be the developer.
Do I have to share my water?
Yes.
Now, about the retainer pond, is that not needed if it's limited to 1.9 acre development?
So this will be an interesting question for Mr. Gandy to approach with his engineers for the future. The way the property is currently proposed to be developed, the site that is being proposed for this self-storage unit is under a certain threshold, and they'll talk a little bit more about this in technical terms, but it's under the threshold requiring a detention pond or retention pond for stormwater drainage. Future development of the parcel could necessitate, most likely would necessitate, additional stormwater management from DEQ required by the state. But the way the current proposal for development is, it did not meet that threshold. Does that answer the question?
Ms. Bryant, I'm looking at a schematic drawing that is in our packet, and it appears that the largest entrance is on Walker Street. Is that correct? The
The
widest?
only entrance
Okay.
proposed is on, at this time, is proposed that is on Walker Street. That's
And
right.
do I read that correct to see a 40-foot setback
Yes,
off of Walker Street?
that's right. And within that would be a landscaped buffer yard, and again, Mr. Gandy can talk a little bit more about the specifics, but he's brought some renderings to assist with demonstrating that. But the buffer yard, our UDO has specific requirements for the number and types of plantings that are within those. And the tree committee would be reviewing it to make sure that it meets, in addition to me, reviewing it to make sure that it meets both the quantity requirements and also the species requirements.
And with the species requirement, is there also anything tied to that as far as a width or height of any plant?
Yes, we have a minimum planting size. It's
Okay.
not the most stringent, but it's a fair size. For instance, shrubs would be the 3-gallon size. Small trees are a certain caliper. I think it's 4 inches. Large trees, 6, somewhere like that. Is
But
that right?
taking into account, it takes a while for these shrubs and trees to grow.
Certainly.
Because there's a drawing just to your left there that shows what I would call trees.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that a part of the requirement that there would be some trees
Yes.
of that size on there?
There would be a tree requirement, yes.
And you don't know off the top of your head exactly like how many trees to the left of the entrance and how many trees to the right of the entrance?
I don't. At this point, a landscape plan hasn't been submitted. We would that's a condition, that it would be compliant with our ordinance and also pass the tree committee's review.
Anyone else have any further questions of Elizabeth before we proceed?
Can I ask the council a question?
Ask who?
My council members, how many of y'all would want this in your backyard?
Well, I'll answer that. I think that as a councilman, I have to consider, and I'm not saying I've made up my mind yet, but I've got to consider those four questions.
I grant you that, but
Yeah.
still, how many of you would want this in your backyard?
I wouldn't want it in my backyard.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay. At this time, because this is a quasi judicial proceedings, we require the people that are going to speak or presenting evidence tonight to stand and take an oath to be truthful. So all of you that are planning to speak, please stand. Okay. All right, do you all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, all right, please be seated. And Tom, it's up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Present your presentation at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, I think, but I am looking forward to presenting my case for the need of a storage facility. I am the owner of All Seasons Self Storage. It's on the north side of UPS facility there on North Oakham Street, 1212 North Oakham Street. We opened that facility in January of 2008. We initially built out 179 storage units, a mix of climate control and outside drive-up units. Climate controlled are heated and air conditioned depending on the time of year. Over the past 12 years, we've had 3 additional build-outs on that property. We would fill up that 179 and get very close to capacity, and I'd build 80 or 100 or 120 more facilities, and a mix of what I felt was needed. And we added 3 different times to the point now, 12 years later, we have 424 storage units. 60% of these are climate controlled, and 169 are drive-up units. And then there's a handful, I think 15 parking spaces. I would have never guessed when I started this facility that I would have 400 units, over 400 units, 424 to be exact, filled and occupied and rented. But as of last month, we were 100% occupied, filled to the max, and I have listened to my manager, Monica, handle phone calls every day of people calling and saying, I'd like to get a storage unit. What are your prices? What do you have available? And I hear her say to them, well, I'm sorry, we do not have any units available. We can put you on a mailing list, a waiting list, and if something comes up, we can see if we can get you in. Right now, we have 22 people standing in line, so to speak, wanting to get into a storage unit. We've had 5 people, Monica told me just in the last few days, who said, well, I can't put I need something now. I'm not leaving my name on a waiting list, and they've just gone someplace to try to find it. So this presents a business problem or a business issue or business opportunity. To spend, say this is it, cap it off, tell people that we have no room. It's a good thing Joseph and Mary weren't coming by to need a space, if that's a poor joke. You all don't joke in here, do you? Okay, the point is, I'm faced with needing to either ignore the issue or build more units. And Mr. Bond, with all due respect, there are other places and facility, areas that could handle storage. But the beauty of this for me and the practicality for me is that I can run those additional storage units on a lot just literally 600 feet, well, around the corner, maybe more than that, from my sales office at 1212 North Oakham Street. So there'll be no other traffic for people going and getting boxes or coming in to sign their lease agreements. We will do that all on 1212. So the only thing would be people coming in and accessing their units. So based on that, I put together and made an offer to purchase the 7.9 acres that's located at 1100 North Oakham Street from the Boys and Girls Club of Edenton and Chowan County. And so I'm seeking a conditional use permit for the development of this property, pure and simple. I understand that this conditional use permit is for the entire 7.9 acres and that I will need to reapply should I do anything beyond the drawing that you have, and I'll include that. You have this in your materials, and I've tried to highlight it so you could see the contents of that development. As noted earlier, it is on less than 24% of the property, and it will contain one climate-controlled building that is 130 by 180. It will contain approximately 138 storage units of varying sizes, from 5 by 5 up to 10 by 30. And that's the blue diagonal section indicated there on the map or the site. There are 5 rows of outside drive-up units. When completed, that will be another 166 storage units, but we're only beginning with 44. And so my plan is to add this row that is 10 foot deep, this row that's 20 foot deep, put a fence around it, and then the climate control building and a gate right here. I'm sorry if I'm in some of your way. But what this does is it totally encloses and secures the property, and I'm using the buildings to accomplish that, along with fencing and a gate. There'll be cast collection grates for water runoff and drainage pipe that is indicated by the black lines that ell into those alleyways. Those will be, and Kim can address this more adequately than me, but when future development is done, this can be tapped in and brought into any future development so that we don't have to disrupt this area that we're working on right now. It will have an automatic security gate. It's computer monitored. Each of our tenants get an individual code. No tenant has a code like anyone else. They come and they either enter it on a keypad, or we have an app that they can indicate and then add to their phone and hit that and get in touchlessly to get into their property. Technology has been a wonderful blessing and a change for the self-storage industry. And we've tried to take advantage of that to make our property more efficient and user-friendly for our tenants. There will be multiple security cameras on the property. On our existing property at 1212 North Oakham, I think we have about 19 cameras. And so it'll be proportioned. There is lighting in the alleyways and the entrances. That's for safety, that's for security, but they are downward pointing. And I've had these before, but they are, at least on these little floodlight, not floodlights, but they're wall lights that basically, spread out over just over the driveway area. When I built this, I wanted it to be a property that my wife could come in the evening after dark and feel secure. The gate comes up, we get a reading on who everybody's code registers into a program. And this may be more detailed, but I'm just wanting you to know that we take very seriously the security of the property. Once a car moves through, the gate comes back down and is secured. As indicated before, the entrance will be from Walker Street, and they would enter the gate and enter and exit from the property there. We've talked about the landscaping, and we're prepared to do what the town requires and what the ordinance require in a combination of trees and shrubs. I'd like to give you just a short history on the property. Approximately 10 years ago, this land was donated to the Boys and Girls Club of Edenton and Chowan County, I think it's referred to. Mr. Russell Twyford, a name that's well known, and some of you may have known Mr. Twyford. I have not met him, and he has since passed away. He's from Elizabeth City, but he made a very generous gift to the Boys and Girls Club with the whole intention that this would allow the Boys and Girls Club to come into Edenton, be able to serve the children more closely to town and not have to be bused. And for many years, I think many of the in-town kids were bused up to the facility up off 32. And so this was a great plan to meet the needs of the club and serve the children of the town better. And so they did a feasibility study, determined it would take $1.5 million to, and this was quite a few years ago, to build a facility and that would house the children and everything. But somewhere in the interim, the Boys and Girls Club began talking to Chowan County, and the whole issue of the D.F. Walker School just sitting there idle, going in disrepair. The Alumni Association was wanting to see something meaningfully done with this property, their alma mater, and somewhere before my time, and I don't know the details, possibly Elizabeth could elaborate, there was a negotiated agreement to refurbish the building, or a portion of the building, and allow the same goals to be accomplished, but not on a separate property, but in the facility of D.F. Walker School. It was going to offer, it was the same cost, they could make the change at the same cost. It would be a quicker turnaround because you weren't having to go from footers up, and it provided the same convenience and location right in Edenton. And so, I guess a little over a year and a half, 2 years ago, the renovation work began, and Elizabeth informs me, I think last June or July, they began to meet in the facility. If you haven't been in it, it's amazing work that they've done. It's brightly colored and just a great, with many rooms and a place, kitchen for the kids to get a meal. So this transaction, now that the land is not needed to build for the Boys and Girls Club, became something, an asset that the club, Boys and Girls Club owned, but they were not going to use it, so they put it on the market. I saw that, made contact through a realtor, and made an offer, and we were able to come to an agreement on the purchase. The closing on that is to take place sometime, I think on the 7th of July, should everything move forward. But this is a win-win, I think, for everybody. The Boys and Girls Club are going to get funds from this asset that they own, thanks to Mr. Twyford, and those monies will be used to hire new staff and to build the program. It's a win for the Alumni Association of D.F. Walker. They can now see that their school is being used and utilized once again, serving the children of Edenton and Chowan County. So this is where we are with how this has come about. We are in the final stages of this transacting, and I may have Elizabeth Mitchell say something in a bit if she wishes to, but I know from my conversations with her, she's thrilled to have these proceeds coming, which is $180,000 that will be used to fund the summer program, of which there are 125 kids signed up for that, And her goal is also to hire staff to help attract older teens to the club. As noted, this property is zoned and has been zoned for many years as industrial warehouse. And so I'm seeking primarily to put to use one type of use for it with the business that I happen to be in. Now, I understand, I recognize that self-storage is not a glamorous business. It's not something that just people go wild over. And Mr. Bond has stated that he doesn't want one in his neighborhood or across the street. And I can understand that. But this is the givens of what we have with the current zoning, and so my goal is to build a first-class facility that is state-of-the-art. I did that when I started my facility 12 years ago. Technology has come a long way, and we have great software. We have an amazing website. All of these function to make our property very user-friendly and customer satisfied. So I simply want to build a good business and be able to take care of all the people that are now still wanting and demanding storage. And it's as simple as that. I want to assure the council and the residents of North Edenton that of all the types of business that could be put in there under this zoning, self-storage is the most benign business that I think you could have. It's a very quiet business. Customers will come in between hours that we establish, between 6 in the morning till 10 at night. Our computer shuts down the gate system so that they cannot enter after 10 o'clock. And so it's quiet. They come in, enter their keypad, go into their unit, which is all inside this compound basically, and check on their things or unload something or load up something, and then leave. I did a study about 3 or 4 weeks ago where I monitored the number of tenants coming into our facility that has 424 units rented out. And I was getting a reading there on an average of 3 units to maybe 4 an hour. But this is going to be 69–70% of that size, and so the number really comes down to probably 2 per hour entering. Now they will exit also, but that seems, at my best guess, the level of traffic. The lighting is discreet but adequate, and it's inside the property. And it will be secured. I'm proud to say that in the 12 years we've never had a break-in into our facility. One, because we show people that there are cameras on site, that it's well lit at night, and so we believe that it adds a security factor there. So I'm not seeking to rezone anything. I only want to use the property in a way that it was designated by the town. I'm willing to invest some significant money to do this, and so that we can provide these customers who call us every day and want storage. So that's what I have to share with you regarding that. I'm asking that you approve our conditional use permit.
Question. You talked about illumination. The illumination you're going to put in, do you think would that have any negative effect on the surrounding neighborhood at all?
At the gate, we would have lights that are, I don't think I show them here, but There would be lights here for the keypad and getting through the gate. But all the other lights would be on the walls of facing into the property. They would be along here, and back here. So that in the parking area, the drive area, and there's entrance doors, 2 doors here and 1 door here into this climate control. Then the alleyways, they will be shooting to the inside. So there's nothing going really to the outside. This would be the closest to something being out, but it's still shaded and points downward.
I have a second question about traffic.
Yes.
Would you repeat your hours again? Will people, did I hear a 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock cutoff date?
We're having equipment malfunction here. 6 in the morning
To 10
till
at night?
10 at night. And the computer, the gate will not operate after 10 at night till 6 in the morning.
And based on the number of units you have there, you're saying anywhere between 1 to 2 cars per hour?
1.1 to 2.2, that's after we get it, built up. I mean, we're starting with, yeah, it's not going to be nearly as many units as at the other 1212 North Oakland.
Mr. Gandy,
Yes.
I've got a couple of questions. If you go back up there, because it's related to some of the things that are up there. Storage building number 1, is that in the pink, right there nearest Walker Street? Pink or red? Your first storage building, I call it storage building number 1,
Okay.
just for ease of reference.
Yes.
On that one, as it faces Walker Street, are there going to be any bay doors on that, or all the bay doors are going to be on the opposite side, not
They all
facing?
face on the inside. This is going to be, this is an air conditioning unit, which it's not going to have, but it's going to look something like this. Same beige metal with landscaping in front of it.
And I think you've already answered this question, but I just want to make sure that I am clear on it. As far as the lighting, there's not going to be any lighting that's going to project out on the south side of the building onto Walker Street and across the street to the residents. All that lighting is going to be on the other side of
That's right.
number 1.
There are currently 4 street lights that go down Walker Street are already existing that light the street, but ours will only point inward. With the exception of possibly the entrance gate. But it still will shoot down. It'll be about 20 feet high and shooting down to the ground.
And with the part of the project that faces North Oakham Street, which I think would be the west side of the project, is there any proposed landscaping on that side of the project? The west side, which would face North Oakham Street?
No, not at this point.
Could that be a consideration also?
I would prefer not.
Staff has that in our condition that it's on North Oakham Street and Walker Street.
Okay.
When we develop this, we expect that there would be a requirement on the street side.
And just one last question. If you pull away the survey there and show us a rendering that's behind that. Is that a rendering that you did in support of this project, or to give people an idea of what it would look like?
Yes, I hired a young girl who's an art major in college, graduate, and asked her if she would, and we took it from, it may not be exactly to scale and everything. I don't know if the tree numbers are exact, but it's a combination of trees and spacings that's outlined, I think, in your all's requirements, right? So
And-
we would conform to that.
Yeah, and I understand that it's not specific at this point in time. I guess my concern is, I like the height of the trees. And would you be willing to commit to some sort of trees, whatever the number is required, that would have that height that is shown there? That
Yeah, I don't know.
just relative
This
to the scale of the
building,
building.
the building is 9 feet tall, so this is projecting up probably, 13, 15 feet maybe.
So,
Those are my questions.
going back to the last question, so you'd be willing to bring in trees at a higher height than just a, because it's gonna take a few years for trees to get, that height.
Money's no object.
Okay.
You guys,
I'm gonna, take a minute and look up in the ordinance, but the ordinance requires a certain caliber tree that will grow to a certain height within a certain period of time. So if you give us a minute, we'll try to find that reference.
I have another question.
sure.
At your current location, is noise an issue with people coming, going, opening up their bag and putting in and taking out?
Really not. I mean, one, I've never heard any complaints. Again, like this proposed property, it's all going, they all point inward, so it's all kind of a walled city, and the doors, and of course, in the climate-controlled building, the 130 by 180, you go into hallways, and all the doors in here are inside the building, so there's none outside. It's only on these units, and I'm only building these two now. I couldn't get Charles Britton to loan me enough money to do the other three, so that's what we're doing.
And I understand your paint will be color will be a beige, a neutral color.
The same as our existing, and if you wanted to look at these photos more closely, I'd be glad to send those around to you. But yes, it's a beige, and the doors are white, so it's very neutral. Yeah, that's the color scheme.
How many units are you planning on putting out there? Because you just said you could only get money for this amount right now. So you're planning to expand this, excuse me, all the way out then, ain't you?
No, I'm not. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I said in my report, 166 units of these drive-up units where they're outside, they're not climate controlled, 166, but I'm only building this and this initially, which is 44 units between these two. The rest in here will add up to these 5 aisles will be 166 units.
But didn't you just say that you could only get X number of dollars if you got other additional funds that you would add on to it? Well, I don't hear anything.
I was being somewhat facetious, but Charles Britton, it's not a blank check. They give me credits, and they will only loan me so much money.
So what's your intention for the rest of this land then?
I do not know. I didn't need the entire 8 acres, and I mean, I played around with some ideas, but I'm interested in doing this, and this is all I'm approaching to do.
No car wash?
I'm not going to comment on what I would do or not, so I'll give you something to fight about, but I'm only asking for this. I'm not addressing what's going to happen to me.
I don't think he understands that you're not building those 3 buildings in the middle now. You're asking for approval, but you're gonna phase. This is all he's trying to get approval for. He's just gonna build it in phases. All of the
This
buildings
is
will not be
Kim
constructed.
Hamby from Timmons Group, who's doing all the site work for us.
And Mr. Ellis, as I understand it, if there was another use of the property made once this one is developed, would he have to follow the same process he's going through now?
We
Absolutely.
have to come
Okay,
back.
so we're not giving him just a,
Yeah.
So right now, we're just talking about this 1.9 acres property.
Well, you're talking about the whole tract, but
I know,
you're
but-
approving it only for what he's
Right, what he's doing now.
That's all I'm
permitted for.
Tell me again on the, just the normal water runoff from that property. I know that Walker seems to slant a little bit downhill toward the tracks. Where do you see that water going? Do you think,
I'd like for Kim Handy with Timmons Group to address
Okay.
that. I'm not I don't have topographical overviews and so forth. This is Kim Handy.
Good evening, I'm Kim Hamby with Timmons Group, and sorry to butt in there a minute ago, but I just wanted to try to clear some things up. Right now, what happens with this land, and you can see we've done a full topographic survey, is there are existing ditches, some of which drain, some of them don't drain very well, that all drain into the existing drainage system that is along Oakham Avenue. Right now, there is a piped drainage system that comes along here and crosses over at this side street, and there are pipes stubbed onto that lot that receive that water now. So with this phase of the development, the intention is to continue draining in that same direction. We'll just improve the drainage in this area to direct it to where it's going right now.
Ms. Knight, is that a hot spot for any water problems there? I know some portions of town we do have some problems.
Not that I'm aware of. I can ask Corey to step in and respond.
I would like to point out a technical issue related to the landscape buffer too, just to explain to everyone, and I know they were looking at the required tree size. Normal landscape buffers, even heavily, really dense ones, generally have a width of 15 to 25 feet. In this case, we have about 10 feet, almost 15 feet from the back of curb to the property line, and then we're gonna have another 40 feet to these buildings. So there is a 50-foot green space that is going to exist between these buildings and that back of curb. He could have done a drive along this building, but it was his choice to try to enclose everything so that it wouldn't be just a fence and cars going behind. And typically, large shade trees are required to be about 8 feet tall when they're planted. An 8-foot tall, 2-inch caliper tree is pretty standard, and with those buildings only being 9 feet tall, of course, the trees would be almost as tall as the buildings at planting, and they would, of course, fill out in a period of time. So.
So as far as the drainage concerns go, currently we don't have any known issues that are in the North Oakham area. This is the beginning of stormwater system that flows south.
Just to answer the question on landscaping real quickly, our ordinance would require a 15-foot perpetually maintained natural or planted buffer with 3 canopy trees and 5 understory trees per 100 linear feet of buffer yard. An understory is like a crepe myrtle that would be required to be 4 feet tall and 1 inch in caliper. And calipers, you know, the diameter of the trunk, the main trunk. Canopy trees are required to be 8 feet in height and 2 inches in caliper when planted, but reach a height of 40 feet, at least 40 feet, and have a crown width of 30 feet or greater. So it would have to be a larger tree like a live oak or something that will grow tall. Also required are 25 shrubs per 100 linear feet. They must be a species which can be expected to reach a minimum height of 36 inches and 30-inch spread within 3 years of planting. So those are the details.
Any further questions of Mr. Gandy or from Elizabeth, either one?
that's one. Tom, did you agree to do the hydrant?
Did I agree?
Did you agree to do the hydrant, the water hydrant?
Sure, throw it in there.
I think that's likely to become a building code issue. We haven't gotten that far into our design yet, but I think typically you're supposed to have a hydrant within 400 feet of all buildings, so that's certainly something we need to design.
By the way, we have no water need at this point, no request for water to come onto the property. The hydrant just is, I guess, for protection in case of fire. But yes, we would agree to do that.
Any further questions? If not, we'll declare the public hearing open. And if you would, when you make any remarks, if you would try to kindly hold them to 3 minutes. And
So Mayor, we have, I know of 3 people that want to speak, 2 who have signed up, Deborah Davis and Lori Ann Curtin, and then Elizabeth Mitchell also wants to speak. So you can call Deborah to the
No,
podium.
I'm going after Laurie and Elizabeth can go to, if possible. I'm at the end.
Okay. And you all were sworn in?
Yes, ma'am.
Elizabeth, you?
you will have your time up.
I do have a little time.
You do.
For the record, my name is Lori Ann Curtin, and I live in North Edenton. Before I make my statement, I want some clarification. If the application is approved, that means the entire property could be built out as storage units. That is a possibility?
No,
Only the 1.9 acres?
correct.
Okay, so anything, even if it's storage units, has to come back before
Correct.
council for changes? Okay, thank you. I just want to say that this is not a win for North Edenton. I'm sure when this property was originally donated to the Boys and Girls Club, the intent for its use was to benefit the entire community, not an individual business. There are so many better places for this industrial style business development. Why does it have to encroach on so many homes? Edenton has an industrial park. Consider the number of people who live in North Edenton and the surrounding neighborhoods. It's a quarter of the populace. I think it would be more consistent with the town council's land use plan if the property and the space were left open or rezoned. Building a warehouse and commercial establishment in this location will have an adverse effect on the surrounding neighborhoods. It will have a negative impact and could reverse all the hard work of so many who still today continue to strive to make these neighborhoods more respectable and attractive. The goal has always been to make North Edenton once again a family-friendly community, like it was not so long ago. At the planning board meeting, one of the members' comments left us to believe that revenue is more important than the quality of life for the residents of North Edenton. There was also a statement summarized that said, "It's the way we did it when it was done then, it's the way it is now." This is truly an oversight. Now, knowing the veneer plant's history of this property, there should have included an environmental survey. We know the types of heavy contaminants and chemicals used in processes today, copper arsenic, and others. There's no mention of the possibility or environmental concerns. It's probably why the owners donated the property so that they didn't have to consider remediation of the soils. We're all familiar with the Superfund site on Mosley Street. This property should also require a thorough investigation. And I say that 40 years ago, there were mistakes made in planning, and that today is the day to correct those mistakes. What may have been progressive in the 1980s is no longer advantageous to the future of Edenton in the 2020s, or to the health of North Edenton. There's a sign in my front yard with a quote, and it's attributed to Barack Obama at the funeral of John Lewis. And each of us is the yearning to do what is right. It's been said that people already know what's right. They don't need to be told. I'm also going to borrow a line from a person I respect and admire and remind you that because you have the right to do something, that does not make it right. I say that too often people make the decisions that's right for them, not for their surroundings or their neighbors.
Lori,
I've
your
been
3 minutes are up.
I've been coming to this town council for 20 years, begging for compassion and caring and progressive investment in my neighborhood in North Edenton. If I can have the courage to continue to stand here and express my emotion, you can have the courage to consider change. There's an opportunity here for the town council to finally show the residents of North Edenton that you care about them. That you care for our well-being and our lives and where we live. And I'm asking the town council, please consider what is right for North Edenton and all the people who live there and surround this area. I'm asking you to please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
Good evening, my name is Elizabeth Mitchell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of the Albemarle, and I'm here to voice my support for Tom Gandy's purchase of the property that we own on Oakham Street. This property, as Tom mentioned, was donated to us nearly about 10 years ago. We intended to build a Boys and Girls Club site on it and took a different direction and are now in the former D.F. Walker School building at 824 North Oakham Street. This building gives us the capacity to more than double the number of children we were serving at our former site out in the county. We opened in July of last year, obviously during the middle of a pandemic. So I think my board was very disappointed that we had about 40 to 60 kids sign up for the club due to the environment of being afraid of getting sick and needing to limit the number of children and people in general in our building. I'm happy to say that this summer we have partnered with Chowan County Schools. They are doing summer school in our facility in the morning. We have about 100 or so kids who attend that program in kindergarten through 8th grade. In the afternoon, beginning at about 1 o'clock, I'd say about another 30 to 40 kids are bussed in and dropped off at the Boys and Girls Club, where the whole program switches and we transition into Boys and Girls Club activity. This, at least for me, is just what we had always dreamed of that would happen at this club. It's full of kids and life and fun, and as Tom mentioned too, I'm very proud of our facility. It's bright, a lot of natural light, just a great space to have a program for kids. Obviously, the Boys and Girls Club would benefit financially from this purchase. With the increase in the numbers that we are seeing right now, I expect it to be even more in the fall. One of our main reasons for moving into town was that we wanted to be able to attract high school age teenagers, and we're beginning to see that. So any funds that we receive would be put towards, at least partially, towards recruiting highly trained staff who can help us recruit this age group, which I think would be a great benefit to the community. And I can't think of a better, I think this seems to me like a win-win, so thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Authority. I am going to the podium, but I'm starting here so it won't be my 3 minutes. This is not an issue with the Boys and Girls Club. And I'm kind of concerned that we took time to have that discussion with this conditional use permit, because it has nothing to do with anybody or anything against the Boys and Girls Club. I need to say that this process has had errors on top of errors and have not been fair. I have 3 different drawings. I have documentation for a special use permit and documentation for a conditional permit. We also found out there was an informational meeting. However, that meeting was held here, and there is COVID, so my families would not have come here. We usually meet at COA cafeteria. However, as nice as Mr. Gandy may be, he has not participated in neighborhood meetings. If the meeting was there, families may or may have not attended, but I'm here to represent my families. And the one thing I know to be true is that Walker Street is narrow. And yes, it does flood, which shows you nobody comes down, nobody kinds of complain, we just let it be what it is. It's not swept, we just happy to survive. The last time there was a lot of attention was with Mr. Glenn that was there. We have suitable lighting, even to the point where I've asked my families to change their window shades because I wanted safety. But yes, near the bottom, it holds water. This is a dead-end street. A fire truck and a vehicle will not be able to pass at the same time. I have gone down there at 3 in the morning when we have had to let somebody out of the apartment or there's been an emergency. Once that, it's as simple as the EMT vehicle. It is difficult with movement, but let me say this. The Housing Authority, since last March to this April, has provided the town of Edenton with $266,089. Why am I saying that? Because at the planning meeting, somebody did say, y'all don't even pay taxes. And I took it and I said, yes, we do. But what it showed me was the lack of respect for my families. Why would I want them to come and hear like anything like that at a meeting? Who lives in a town and doesn't pay taxes? You don't have to be a property owner to not pay taxes or a homeowner. You buy, you shop, you're paying taxes. What I am asking, since what the attorney said was true, you're just looking at this little part. First thing, you know those trees are gonna take 7, 8 years. We will be retired, moving on before they're up covering that space. Next thing, at the planning meeting, somebody recommended, well, can't you go in from Oakham? And the architect said, no, there are other plans for the building. So no, we aren't going to discuss the car wash, and we aren't going to discuss the luxury boats. But I do know at your property, the storage in West Virginia, you advertise bringing the boats to your self-storage, so it would not be, the boats wouldn't be an eyesore. I saw you in a picture, so I'm sorry, somebody must have TikTok you in the picture.
You didn't.
Okay. I need to ask that if you have no mercy for my families, and this is what you want to do, and you're approving this one part, I am asking that you change the entrance off Walker Street that's a dead end onto Oakham. Just a small little strip on the property that people will enter and they can go all the way to the back end of the property. I'm thinking we're saying a strip on the north side that will allow entrance from the front to the back. Again, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. There are families there, there are children. We have a camera, $4,000. And it has protected the area. And it is a good area. May have not always been, but it's a good area. They care about what they are looking at and how they're enjoying their community. They are worthy. So it is a business. Money is not a problem. But I am asking the council if you are going to vote on this, because some have made up their mind. If this is a go, please look at where the entrance is. My main thing that I'm negotiable about, if you want them to have to look at the building, please don't have the entrance from a dead-end street. Edenton has small streets. We know that. We watch trucks try to turn around and everything. If you have to give him what he wants, please change where this entrance is so my families can enjoy where they live, where they can go back and forth, in and out of Walker Street. Thank you.
Mayor, do you want me to go check and see if anybody
Yes.
else has changed their mind or not? Just
No, okay. Yes, please. Okay, so having found out that there's no one else to speak, we'll close the public hearing. And now we have, as the council, consideration of the CUP application. We need to vote on these 4 criteria separately. And the first one is,
Mayor, before you begin, I've got a comment before we deliberate and also vote. Hopefully our town attorney can help us all on this. I am a member of the board of directors of the local Boys and Girls Club. And so I believe, even if that's not a conflict of interest, it requires disclosure. So I'm disclosing it in the interest of transparency. And is there a problem with me deliberating and voting under those circumstances?
I don't have the language of the conflict of interest provision right in front of me. I think it talks about, whether you're related, or whether you have a direct financial interest in the transaction. And I do have this, it says, I didn't think I had it, but it's 160A, and it's probably 160D now, and 388, but it says that a close familial business or other association or relationship with an affected person or a financial interest in the outcome of the matter. Clearly, you don't have a financial interest.
I have no financial interest.
So the question would be whether you have a close business or other association or relationship with an affected person. Obviously, the Boys and Girls Club is indirectly affected. I would assume that provision is actually talking about an affected person being the applicant, Mr. Gandy, before the board. But I mean, that's what it says. It doesn't say direct or indirect. It talks about a direct interest. If that associational relationship being on the board of the Boys and Girls Club board it's definitely an associational relationship.
Here's my concern, and I don't know this to be true. But if this council voted in favor of this CUP, I'm assuming that the transaction scheduled for July 7th would take place. If this council voted to deny Mr. Gandy's application, I'm assuming it probably would not take place. So one vote would lead to an organization receiving money that I have an associated relationship with, and another result and vote would cause them not to receive that money. And so that's
And I think,
that's where my concern is, and I don't.
I think it's rightly so, and I think, it says an affected person, it doesn't say applicant. It just says it's a general description of an affected person. I mean, obviously, a conservative interpretation of that would say you have a conflict.
It feels like one.
Yeah.
As I sit here, and I had overlooked I was thinking more in terms of direct financial interest or indirect financial interest, without concentrating so much on that additional language that you
And it does,
read us.
it says that, but it also again says association or relationship with an affected person or a financial interest. So I think the relationship is enough to disqualify you or recuse you for having a conflict. And again, I think that's the conservative interpretation.
Well, there are two things that are gnawing at me right now is my gut, and I've learned over the years that my gut's gnawing at me, it's a reason. And also, and part of this, and you'll understand this, is in my profession, we are encouraged to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And I certainly think that if I voted one way, it could give certain people in this room or a court questions about impropriety. And that's my analysis. I don't know if I need to make a motion or somebody else needs to.
I think, what you would do is ask them to recuse you. If, in other words, you've raised the issue, and it says that if you don't recuse yourself, then your other members may by majority vote recuse.
Do I have the opportunity to do it
Yeah,
on my own?
yes.
And would they then vote on it, or just?
I think that sounds like the safe bet for you to make that motion and let the full council vote on it.
Gentlemen, for the reasons I've already stated, I just don't feel good, like in good faith I can proceed. I would make the motion that I've been recused from voting.
You got a second there?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Councilman High to recuse himself from the vote on this. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Gut's saying that, right? Your gut is saying. Okay.
Gut, and also my training.
Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You recused.
I think when this has happened before, I've sat out in the audience.
I think you're fine, as long as you don't participate in it.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary.
Okay.
I have a
Greg,
question.
you had your-
Question, Mr. Gandy, did you ever consider having the entrance off of Open Street? And why have you changed to Walker?
Can I answer from here?
Sure.
The frontage is the most valuable property for something in the future. And plus it would require much more driveway, maybe up to 400 feet of driveway to get to that back area. I would have to reconfigure the whole diagram and so forth. So no, I mean, we haven't considered it for that purpose, for that reason.
Any further questions or comments? All right, if not, we will proceed to the 4 questions that we must answer. And the first one is that it will not endanger the public health or safety.
So moved.
Okay. Have a motion, do we have a second?
Talking about public health and safety.
That's correct.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. That it will not, opposed? Motion.
Aye.
Okay, so we have 1 no. Okay, the next one is it will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting property.
So moved.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify.
Aye.
Okay.
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 1 no on that. All right, the next one is will be in harmony with the area in which it is located.
So moved.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Okay, and the fourth one is it will be in conformity.
We have time.
I'm sorry?
Sounded like you might have a 2-2 on that.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, 2-2.
I'm sorry.
Be sure. In other words,
Let me ask again, all those in favor of the vote of number C, that it will be in harmony with the area in which located, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, noes?
Nay.
No.
Who said no over here? So we got 2 noes, okay.
But we have a tie, so you
maybe it's gotta break
pay us
the tie.
up.
Okay. I vote affirmative. So, it's 3-2. Okay. All right, we good? Okay, the last one is, will be in conformity with the land use plan, thoroughfare plan, or other.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Suppose you disagree with the land use program, so you vote no still?
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. The item here is will be in conformity with the land use plan or thoroughfare plan or other plan officially adopted by the town council. Okay, so, we need a motion on that.
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Sir.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
No.
Just have 1 no on that. Okay. Emery, you gotta help me here.
Okay, so, and I'm gonna call on Elizabeth to help us. The council is required, if the 4 findings of fact are all, approved or voted yes, then the council has to vote to issue the permit, but there's a requirement.
Right. So the last part of my staff report that includes that consistency statement, general statute now requires just a statement of consistency with the land use plan. If you have a motion to approve the permit, it would be suggested that you make that motion to approve the permit and also adopt the included statement of consistency with the land use plan included with the staff report.
And do we have a motion to, authorize the conditional use permit with conditions recommended by staff and any additional conditions recommended by council, based on the findings of the facts?
The additional condition that the fire hydrant is needed. That is in,
Yeah, Elizabeth said that was gonna be included, I believe.
If you'd like me to add it
Yes, again.
separately,
Yes.
then I
That's
can
part of
certainly
it.
do that.
safe.
Do we have a motion?
Yes.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
So we have 3 to 1. Okay. The motion carries. So we issued a conditional use report.
can I make a statement?
Sure.
I hope my council members realize that they just voted for something that they wouldn't want in their own backyard. You're telling my group of people in North Edenton truly that you don't care about their film.
We're not saying that.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you
Yes, you are.
That's out of line.
That's
I'm telling you, that's out of line.
Okay, I might be wrong, but I feel this from the heart.
Well, but
So I said it's out of the way.
it's
You got what you wanted, so good.
I don't think we were voting to put it in anyone's backyard. It is commercial property. And I believe, I didn't say this, Anne Marie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but someone mentioned earlier about a car wash, that he could have put that on there today without getting any permission, if I'm understanding correctly.
Elizabeth, that's right.
A car wash is a permitted use. It
But
doesn't
now-
require a conditional
But
use.
now we've taken that away. He's got to come back to us to get that permission if he were going to do that.
I'm just like you.
What?
I'm just like you, I'm quick tempered.
Okay, so the motion carries. So Tom, you have your conditional use permit. Okay, the next item is a resolution of intent to close a portion of a paper street off of Granville Street, and I will call on Ms. Knighton to.
Sure, Mayor, and I briefed the council on this item at your last meeting. We recently became aware of 2 encroachments that exist on 716 North Granville Street, and the town attorney advised of the most, I guess the only way to cure that is for the town to officially close the paper street, and then half of the property, it's a 50-foot width right-of-way, and half of that property will go to the owners of 716 North Granville, and the remaining half will go to Chowan County. And the statute requires intense notice. We have to advertise for the public hearing in four consecutive weeks in the Chowan Herald, and then we have to notify the adjoining property owners, and we also have to post a notice on the property.
And I also understand that we can't sell that property, we have to donate it, is that correct?
Yeah, in other words, when you close the street, the statute automatically gives half of the property owner on one side and half on the other.
And if we were not to use it as a street, there's no other practical use we could make of a 50-foot strip of land. And since we previously indicated we were going to use it for a street, we couldn't do that legally either, right?
I guess you could open the right of way if you decided you wanted to put Cemetery Street in on this platted right of way, we could put it in. But
For a street, but we
for a street,
can't.
Yeah, no.
It's really of no value to the town of Edenton except as a street. And is that?
Yes.
How wide and how long is it?
It's only it's
a
50 feet
50
wide,
feet
but
wide,
we're not
was-
closing all of it, we're just closing enough to help out that adjoining property owner.
And adjoining property owner can get half and the county will get the other half?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the problem is the people that own the house on that North Granville have their driveways in the 50 feet. So by doing this, you cut out they get the driveway on their property. And it looks like it's 110 feet long, so it's 50 by 110.
We still have access cutting through on the county property to get back there, do you think?
We have access, that was the first thing that we considered, that we wanted to make sure we weren't,
Yeah, like I
limited
said,
to Public Works.
I'm not sure we're getting a new owner or anything, but it really smells terrible back there. It smells, have you ever had anything about, I don't know if it's the garbage trucks or what it is, but it's just, from that backyard of that house, it's a pretty strong smell. I wouldn't look,
You're talking about the brick house there in the corner, right?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just something to think about. It's pretty rough.
Just for curiosity, how many more streets we have?
You asked me at the last meeting, and we'll ask Land Records if they could give us a count. There are a couple more.
Couple more?
Yes.
These we call ghost streets.
Yeah, definitely, 'cause I mean, they exist on paper and that's it.
Okay, any more questions or comments regarding the paper street? If not, I will entertain a motion to
So
adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And the next one is a budget amendment for the airport under the CARES Act funding. And Anne-Marie, I'll call on you again, please.
Yes, all general aviation airports in, I guess throughout the country, but especially in North Carolina, were eligible for some additional funding under that first COVID package that was passed back in 2020. You recall, I think we received $30,000 that helped our budget last year, and this $13,000 will help offset salaries, utilities, maintenance and repair expenses, and some mowing services at the airport. So this in theory will help offset some of the lost revenue that we had because of COVID in terms of sale of aviation and jet fuel.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, and the next is a budget amendment for the water and sewer fund, and the Chowan County reimbursement. Anne-Marie, I'll call you again.
Yes, Corey coordinated with Barnhill, and they were able to give us a proposal to pave, I guess, dig out, backfill, and then pave a couple utility cuts that the town made to help the county with infrastructure needed at the Boys and Girls Club. And then also, the county wanted some additional parking areas paved. So the county agreed to reimburse the town that $26,600 for that paving work. And Virginia and Corey coordinated. There was a lot of coordination, and we're grateful to the county, but the commissioners approved it last week. The work is done, and we delivered an invoice to the county today. So hopefully.
When was that work done?
Last Tuesday.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. Thank you.
All right, any questions or comments for Anne-Marie on that?
Looks good.
Okay. All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And Anne-Marie, I'll call on you one more time for the end of the year physical budget amendments.
Yes, Virginia has prepared a series of budget amendments, which we normally have for you at the end of the fiscal year. Balancing the budget, there's an amendment to balance the special projects fund that was set up for the new trolley. There's reallocation of funds from salary and wages in the police department due to some vacancies, and then some needs in terms of salary and wages for the street department and for the landscape department, including, and also utilities in the street department. Then there's a similar reallocation of funds moving to the electric fund. Funds that were not expended in the power purchase line item are needed, or where we are requesting to be transferred to help balance the electric admin account for salary, FICA, and retirement. And then the final one is to reallocate in the water and sewer fund, and revenues are higher than what we budgeted by about $34,000, and so we're allocating to balance salary, health insurance, retirement, utilities in the water fund, salaries and utilities in the I guess sewer operations, that's the wastewater treatment plant, and then maintenance, water and sewer maintenance as well.
Okay,
So,
okay. We have a motion, we have a second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions or comments to Ms. Knighton? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And now we will need a motion to end the special session, special meeting.
So moved.
second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, and now we'll move into our committee meetings, and the first one is the Administrative Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Hyde.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. Our committee has 3 items to discuss with full council tonight. The first matter, we've had a number of conversations about what are some of the things that this council can do to address the crime situation in Edenton, and particularly the number of gunshots and gun shooting incidents that we've had. And we've considered a number of different things, and the thing that has our attention, our interest the most, is a potential acoustic threat detection system that Chief King has previously reported to us on, along with Anne-Marie Knighton. And to further obtain more information on that particular threat detection system, Chief King, our electric director, Mike Nichols, and our vendor who supports the police department's network of cameras around town participated with Anne-Marie Knighton in a Zoom call last week to review the technology and make sure that we're not missing anything that would be important. What the system will do, this council will recollect, would be to pinpoint with amazing accuracy where gunshots are. It would decrease our reaction time in getting to the scene of where these gunshots take place. And a lot of times we're relying upon citizens to tell us where gunshots have come from. And a lot of times with the way sound works, there's some inaccuracies in that. So this would improve that. So we've got Chief King here in person to speak as to what he's found out. We also have representatives of ICOM, which is the vendor who would be selling us the threat detection system. And I believe we also have Mark Montgomery. Many of you know Mark locally. He's with NetChange, and he would be assisting ICOM in providing the network for the cameras to operate. So with that being said, Chief, if you can lead us through it, or Ms. Knight and whoever wants to do it, that's kind of the prelude to it. I'm going to hand it off to the people who know more than I do about it.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Councilman Hyde. Again, good evening, Mayor and Council and the citizens of Edenton. Again, you asked me and the town manager, Ms. Knighton, to go back and evaluate. We completed your mission, and we have decided that Acom was gonna be the best product for the town of Edenton. Again, just like Councilman Hyde indicated, we had a Zoom meeting with Mark Montgomery, Acom, Mike Nichols, to put all the stakeholders at the table. And this system will tie into our existing cameras that we have, and it is a win-win for the town of Edenton and the citizens of Edenton. Tonight, I think we're gonna have a brief overview from Acom to give the council an overview of the system and allow council to ask any questions that they may have. And I really think that you will be impressed on how this will take Edenton and the town of Edenton to the next level.
And we have, on Zoom, I think I'll turn it over to Bobby Darling. And Bobby, if you want to introduce your team, and then let us know when you're ready for us to pull up the presentation, and we'll share the screen with everybody.
Sure. Thank you, Anne Marie, and Chief and council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm a huge fan of actually taking a part of these meetings. I feel like it's where democracy actually happens, where you can affect people on a day-to-day basis. And I always appreciate being able to speak to you all. So myself, Bobby Darling, I came to Acklin about 3.5 years ago from, I call it corporate America, which would be your Capital Ones, your big Fortune 500 companies. Happened to be sitting on a plane next to an owner headed to New York for work, and he struck up a conversation with me. And I like telling the story because I bought into what he was saying in terms of being able to affect the lives of people on a daily basis, and that's why I ended up coming to ACOM. We do a lot of different things, from air pollution to maintenance or industrial products and engineering. Specifically today, what we'll talk about will be the gunshot detection and what we've been able to do over the last 27 years. And we're very passionate about it. And Mike and I brought it to the U.S. A little over a year ago. And that's how we got pulled into this specific technology. But I'll let Mike take a quick second and talk about himself as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. Glad to be here. Along with Bobby, working for ACOM, I've been working directly for ACOM almost 3 years now, but I was a rep for ACOM for a little over a decade on the industrial maintenance side, dealing with industrial machinery, power plants, chemical plants, refineries, stuff like that, and all the technology that ACOM has on that side. Bobby and I were tasked, like you mentioned, a little over a year ago, with bringing some of the environmental products like the air pollution monitoring, noise pollution monitoring, and the acoustic threat detection with the gunshot sensor that we'll talk about a little bit later, of bringing those products from our parent company in France over into the U.S. market and developing that business over here also. So ACOM, as you'll hear a little bit more about our company, as we talk about it, it is a large company. It does a lot of different technologies and has a lot of offerings in the U.S., and we've been entrenched for over a decade now here in the U.S. So,
Anne-Marie, if you'd like to start the presentation, we can go from there.
Sure.
Perfect, thank you. So what you see there is actually our pod or sensor. It's about a softball size. The spikes on top, you can ignore those. Those are bird spikes, and you don't have an issue with pigeons. You're not in New York City. So we won't have those necessarily for this deployment. The foam covering underneath the white part is actually just a protective cover that goes over a microphone array. So it has 4 microphones underneath there. The sensor itself actually comes in 2 colors, white or black, depending on whether or not we want to be more covert and hidden out of the way, or blend in with a building or some sort of facade. We can use white in that scenario. We can also paint them, but those are 2 primary colors that we order it in. And Anne-Marie, if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. My main, I think, point, what I would like to get across is whenever you do a partnership, I find it very effective to get to know the company and the people that you are going into business with. It's not a short-term sale. It's not something that we're going to implement and walk away from. It's going to be years of building on that relationship and continuing to leave a legacy of a more safer, secure community that Edenton can continue to build on for years to come. And it will allow us to build a strategy that outlives all of us, hopefully. But our company, in terms of our background, we actually started about 40 years ago in acoustic expertise. We started identifying submarines. And then in 1995, working with the French Army on that submarine detection, they came to us with NATO and they said, hey, look, we're in Bosnia. We have the Sarajevo conflict. And there's a very specific road, it's called Sniper Alley. And we can't converse, we can't traverse the area, and we need to figure out where these snipers are. And that's how we got into the gunshot detection piece of it, just being experts in acoustics identification. And in 1999, after we realized that we were pretty good at it, we joined forces with the United States Army, and we're actually deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan for small arms fire. And continue that. And the reason why I bring that up is that's 27 years of data that we've been able to collect. And one of the things that sets us apart is that artificial intelligence, or that algorithm, the neural networks within our sensors that allow us to do some very unique things as it relates to technology and being able to detect a ballistic as it travels through the air. So we continue that, that iteration of bettering our AI. In 2020 is when we deregulated that technology from some things that we wouldn't use in the civilian world and could create the civilian application, brought it to the U.S., and we were basically handed a sensor and said, here, we need you to figure out how to get this into the cities within the U.S., as many as possible, to start protecting lives. Well, and Anne-Marie, if you'd like to go to the next slide, it'd be great. And one of the things that we did is we were able to figure out that it's not necessary, when we say deregulate, it's not necessary to be, attached to a helicopter and detecting RPG fire or small arms fire. We don't need to attach it to the top of a Humvee. It has a turret with a gun on it, and when somebody starts firing, turn the turret and start shooting the gun back. So we deregulate that technology to where all we need to do is create situational awareness, give a pinpoint location, and then put a camera on that area so that the responding officers understand exactly what is going on. Is there a victim on the ground? Did the threat run? Did they drive away? And by doing that, allows our police officers to respond with the accurate amount of force going into the situation, knowing there's victims on the ground, and that's what we've done. So there's two ways we detect a gunshot. One would be the muzzle blast, is what we're seeing right there. And then the second way, and everybody detects the muzzle blast, that's very easy technology. But the second way, the more important way, is being able to detect that actual caliber as it travels through the air. So each caliber has a unique signature as it travels, and that gives our sensors the ability to triangulate individually. So we don't need a network of sensors. Only one can triangulate where that gun was fired from, and then we turn the camera to that exact location, giving eyes to the situation. So then our command center can then relay the information to the responding police officer. The police officer also will have a video on their device within their car that they can see the scenario as it unfolds. And that's what we're giving from a situational awareness standpoint. And if you'd like to go to the next slide. This is giving you an idea of what the graph looks like when we hear a gunshot. That first larger circle is the muzzle blast. We detect that portion. And then as the bullet travels, you'll see that second blip on this seismic graph. That is the unique signature of the round traveling. And regardless if it's good conditions, degraded conditions, a car idling next to the sensor, that unique signature will always be there, therefore allowing us to triangulate with the microphones in the sensor and giving us that location. I'd like to stop there and see if there are any questions about that specific part of the technology.
One question.
Okay, perfect.
Are you saying that every gun, every type of gun has its own sound?
It does. So, if you take a look at a 5.56 round versus a 22 or a 40 caliber, the amount of powder that's packed into that round, the size of that round, the speed in which it travels, lets off a unique signature within the atmosphere that we can detect. It's also very different from like a car backfiring or fireworks. If you were to detect just on muzzle blast alone, to someone who's not around gunshots or gunfire often or a lot in their past, a car backfiring can sound exactly similar to a gunshot, but it doesn't have that projectile.
I think you're okay to continue, Bobby.
Okay, yep, feel free to go to the next slide. I believe you all saw, I think you saw this. If we want, we can absolutely play it again and I can kind of walk you through the test that we were doing here. Or if you saw it last week, then that's totally fine as well.
We saw that.
That's right, I saw it.
What is the distance that this equipment can detect a bullet? How far, what's the range of it?
Yes, sir. So each sensor can detect up to 750,000 square feet around the sensor itself. And what that equates to is a very conservative number of 500 feet radius all the way around the sensor, which is a very large area. We have personally tested all the way up to 960 feet in 30 to 50 mile an hour winds at DB levels of 114, and we're 99% accurate at 1,000 feet. And just to give you an idea, when we do this from a strategy deployment standpoint, we want some crossover, so that's why we used a 500-foot radius versus a 1,000-foot radius to make sure that we are covering all of the area versus having gaps within the security layers.
Okay, Bobby.
Okay. And if you want to play this, that's totally fine. Now we can move forward. I'm going to let Mike talk through the technology piece as it relates to VMS. There's a lot of good information here in terms of being a force multiplier. And being able to tie directly into your security protocols and processes and software that you currently have up already throughout the town.
So as far as adapting the sensors into your camera network that Chief King, and we've discussed about, each sensor can pair with a PTZ camera that y'all currently have deployed throughout the city. So we will pair a sensor with a camera, put that sensor on that same pole as the camera, and through what they call on-beat protocol, which is basically like a language that security devices can use to communicate between each other. So through on-beat protocol that your PTZ cameras already have, we can communicate our gunshot sensor to that camera. So when we detect a gunshot, we can move that camera to the shooter or in the direction of where the gunshot happened. From there, your current cameras are already tied into a VMS, a video monitoring software called, I believe it's UniView and Easy Station. That's what we're showing right here. And from there, we can create alarms that your 911 station will get, or your police officers on patrol will get in their vehicles, to alert them that, hey, there was a gunshot on this street corner at this pole, and here's the video or the still footage of what it captured after the alarm. So that's how we tie stuff into the VMS. Or you can go to the next one. All right. As far as the VMS alerts, and this is all IT jargon, so they use what they call HTTP alerts, which are just simple commands that are sent from the sensor into your current VMS system, and it creates the alarm how you guys want it. If you want it text messaged out, emailed out, just a simple alert through the VMS, which is typically what we set up, it's real quick and easy to deploy that. You can go to the next one, Ms. Anne-Marie. We have multiple solutions. This kind of shows one of our smart city poles with solar powered. That's a little bit a different solution than what y'all are going to put in, since we're going to mount these to the current poles where the PTZ cameras are. And I believe Mark's up on the phone call. He can kind of talk about some of the switches that need to be added to each point to make this work. Mark, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. The only thing we'll have to do additionally to accommodate these sensors is add what's called a PoE switch, or power over Ethernet switch, to each of the enclosures where the cameras are currently housed. And what that PoE switch will do is provide power and communication back to the sensor, and then that would be back onto our network, and then to the NVR, or the VMS system.
All right, you can go to the next one, Ms. Anne-Marie.
Craig has a question.
What's the useful life of this technology? I see it's weatherproof, waterproof, corrosion resistant, but how long will it last?
Typically what we found in, so most of our applications are in theaters of war, like Bobby was talking about earlier. We're working with 26 different military units. We also have them on several border crossings. What we've seen is just depending on the weather conditions and stuff like that. So placing them in North Carolina is going to be a little bit different than them being in Afghanistan, honestly. So what we see over there in the desert and the different border crossings that we have, that these sensors are lasting anywhere from 8 to 12 years. The main thing that has to be replaced on them is this foam insert Bobby was talking about right here, which typically needs to be replaced anywhere from 3 to 5 years depending on weather conditions. So you're not going to have dry sand blowing on it every day. Your worst weather condition, just like I'm in Louisiana, so we're both dealing with hurricanes is the main thing we're going to deal with. So high wind, high water, stuff like that is not going to affect it like the everyday sand in deserts. So.
Thanks. Thank you.
So some of the other updates that are coming to this, and all of our software updates are free for the life of the product. So in our current roadmap in the next year or so, we're going to be adding broken glass detection. So, we have a few customers that want to be, notified of broken glass. So somebody's breaking into a car, or if there's a wreck in the street, that it picks up a broken glass sound. That is in our pipeline over the next year or so to be added to these sensors. We can also add elevated voices. So if you're in a concert area or a high traffic area, and there's screaming or yelling or anything like that, that typically leads to a fight breaking out or just something happening, we're going to be able to detect elevated voices and add that into the pipeline also. So those are some of the updates that are coming in the near future, planned for sometime in the middle of 2022. And all of those updates are included in any firmware for free.
Would fireworks be like an explosive?
Fireworks are in there right now. So the explosion detection that is in our pipeline for the future is like terrorist bomb or something like that. So what's in there now is we can detect fireworks and we can detect gunshots. What you see here This is a map. Chief King kind of sent us some gunshot data and kind of asked us, you know, obviously without doing a ride along and knowing where the cameras are, where we would place these sensors based on gunshot data in the past. And this is kind of what we put together based on that information we got from Chief King. So what you see there is each of those sensors, and that yellow circle is a 500-foot radius and what each of those sensors would cover. So that's kind of what you're looking at there.
So in the package that we're getting, how many sensors will we be actually buying or getting?
It will be 15 sensors.
15.
So Chief King and I took a look at a very specific square mile that we were having some gunshot issues. And then within the data of that square mile over the last 4 years, we've identified even smaller segments within that area that we will be specifically targeting.
And how many current cameras do we have, Chief?
We have 27 cameras, but some of them are counted with what we have at the station. So just to back up, we might have about 16 or between 20 that we have in town in different locations. And Bob, I think that this would be a good point for you to explain to the council, especially with the map being up, that if someone was to fire a firearm, let's say outside of this 1 square mile or towards out in the county, but it came through one of the sensors, then we will be able to tell that in case someone called, that it didn't happen in town, it happened somewhere else. If you can kind of explain that to them.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Chief. So just because there is a perimeter, that red perimeter outline in a square mile, doesn't mean that we stop detection at that point. So if you were to have someone, I'll just use the red icon at the very bottom, right above Edenton and Court Street. I don't know how far that is outside of that perimeter, but if someone were to fire from there in the direction of that square mile of our sensors, as long as it passes within that detection radius, we will be able to triangulate, detect, and locate that specific threat. And obviously, you're more than likely not going to have camera view, depending on how far away it is and whether or not there's a building. But you will still get lat and longitude coordinates of that shot. So just because it doesn't initiate from inside the square mile does not mean we won't detect it.
And the purpose of me bringing this up, Council, is sometimes at American Legion, there's a hunting site out there. So sometimes we hear shots fired and we think something's going on, but they're actually out there hunting. So it kind of help eliminate some of that.
If a camera doesn't pick it up, does the information still get to the station?
Yes, it does. In other words, we would get an alert that it was shots fired, how many shots were fired, and the exact location. It's just that we don't, based on the location, we don't have cameras in every location of the sensor. So we would still get the number of shots and the location of shots, and the officer will be responding there.
You just answered a question, because I was going to say, in my community, after they finish farming, especially during rabbit season, they go back there and hunt. You can hear shotguns shooting all the time, but you know, we know what it is. But that will still be picked up on that.
If they're shooting in the direction or towards the direction of those sensors, they can pick them up. Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you had 15 of those scattered around in Edenton, I would suppose you would start in the areas that you have a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
But wouldn't that require you to have more police officers so they could reach the point sooner?
Council, it's going to allow us to be able to respond quicker because now we have the accurate information. We don't have to wait on citizens to call and send us sometimes in the wrong direction. So we will get the call before somebody can call 911.
Oh, okay.
And also we would, in some of those communities, we will know about the shots fired even though they don't call. Because we have known that we have shots fired and no one has called the police. Go ahead, Bobby.
Alright, you can go to the next slide, Henry. And Bobby, I'll kind of let you go over this, this is the pricing and
Yeah, and this is actually the option that we did not go with. It's on the next slide. But one of the things I did want to touch on to council members' question about needing more police officers. You know, one of the things that we will try to do is help Chief be more efficient with what he currently has. And by understanding where the gunshots are coming from and whether or not they are truly gunshots, will allow him to better utilize his current officers and his force to ensure that they're using it in the areas that are needed and most effectively. So that's why we say it's a force multiplier. It's going to fill in the gaps where we will not have officers on the ground at the time. But so what we ended up going with, everything that we looked at, that we talked about, is $115,000, and that was the option 2 for an upfront cost. You own the equipment. You are not leasing it from us. There are no recurring fees. There are no hidden fees. That is all in, and for the life of the product, you will get software updates as well. So anytime we make enhancements, we will tie in remotely on the back end and take care of the updates for you.
What about maintenance?
Yep, so you'll have a warranty that comes with it. It's a 2-year warranty, standard warranty. There isn't any maintenance except if you need to replace the foam covering over the microphones. It's a minimal cost, but anything that's under warranty would be covered. So from a maintenance standpoint, there won't be any. What we do suggest is on by twice a year or quarterly basis would be to just do a systems check in terms of making sure that the camera is linked to this sensor and orientated properly. Outside of that would be it. You'll have a software that someone designated within the police department can check to make sure that the health of the system is up and running and everything's online the way it's supposed to and acting properly.
And you also get alerts if one of these sensors were to go offline for any reason, you would get an alert that it went offline.
That's it, ain't it, Bobby?
Yep, so any other questions? I think that was the last slide. So if there are any other questions, be happy to field those.
Have any of the other neighboring communities that utilize the system have any positive reviews about the system? I understand Greenville and Goldsboro, I believe those are 2 municipalities that are using the system. Are they quite pleased with it?
Yep, so it's a great question, and one of the things that it's not Greensboro, I believe it is who you said, it's not them, no sir. So we have Virginia State, Cheshire County, we have some DOE labs here in the States, Fayetteville, North Carolina, we are starting a project with them, would be the closest, but in terms of any references that I can share with you outside of NDAs, I don't have any very specific references to say, yes, a gun was fired and here's where it is. Majority of all of our work and business has been in the DoD field, which we are unable to disclose outside of who we've partnered with.
And Councilman Miller, I can kind of answer some of your questions. I think you were cross-referencing Greenville. They have ShotSpotter, which is their competitor. But however, I did reach out to the chief at Virginia State University, and he had nothing but great things to say about the company. It was a smooth process. They was able to get the system up and running. It's just that at Virginia State University, for right now, they haven't had any shots fired incidents on campus, but he had nothing but good things to say. And I was able to reach out to DEA and FBI, and they were just able to tell me that it's going to be a win-win for us. And as the council see, as they continue to expand on the software, I think that we will benefit from, breaking glass here in town, because now we can respond to certain break-ins, or glass breakage, because it's not known for just glass to be breaking in town. So now, and we don't have to pay the extra money for it.
How big a problem is it gonna be, Chief, with the triangular type situation? If it happens at a bad point, bad place, where there is no camera, what happens then?
So Mayor, we respond, and I put together a policy. We respond to the location where the shots were fired at, and it's pinpointed. And let's say it's showing right here in front of the monument. Then we would pretty much go fan out in every direction from that spot to look for the shell casings to start collecting the evidence. But at least we know now that this is where the incident took place at. Now, however, what we also can see is that let's say that someone's in the vehicle as they're shooting, it's going to be able to show us those balloons that you saw kind of like on the map, and then as the officer responding, they can see a direction of travel that the vehicle that the shooter's going in, because on foot you can't move that fast. The first shot can't be here and the next shot is at Steve's X sign. You have to be in the car. You can't run that fast unless you're the flash, of course. So it gives you an opportunity to be able to let us know the direction of travel in that case, and the seconds in between each shot.
Thank you, Chief King, and guys, appreciate you guys participating with us via Zoom. And if we have any more follow-up questions between now and our July 13th regular meeting, we'll get those to Ms. Knight, and then she'll contact you guys. So I appreciate your time very much. And at this time, we've said before, I think the citizens of the community are looking for us for leadership on this issue, and I think Chief King has demonstrated leadership on it, and we would probably be well advised, or would be well advised, to follow his lead, unless any of the other committee members would object. I would just recommend approval at our July 13th meeting. The next matter, Mayor, that we have is a resolution for receiving federal funds under the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARP Act, and we are set to receive $1.3 million in ARP Act funds. One of the requirements of us receiving those funds is that we must pass a resolution which states several things. One, that the ARP Act money will be kept in a separate fund and not commingled with any other revenue or any other accounts that we may have. The other requirement is that we follow the regulations and guidance given to us by both the North Carolina General Assembly and the U.S. Treasury Department in order to receive these funds. And finally, if there are any unspent funds, we should agree to provide those back to the state of North Carolina and the United States Treasury. Staff has put together a resolution that meets those requirements, and I think those requirements are fairly minimal. The devil's in the details. We're just going to have to make sure that we spend those funds on allowable funds. But at this point in time, the big thing to know is that we don't receive the funds unless we pass this resolution. And with that in mind, I would recommend, unless other committee members have an objection, that we do pass this resolution. And would that be tonight? Are we able to pass it tonight? We would have to do it at the regular meeting. So we would pass that along to full council at that meeting for us to pass that resolution. And finally, Mayor, the last item that we have before you is a proposed memorandum of understanding between the town of Edenton and the College of Albemarle. They have been using our airport for training for commercial drivers license programs, and they intend to continue to do that. This memorandum of understanding just sets forth that they, up to 6 times per year, may use a designated area of the airport for the purposes of conducting their training program for commercial drivers. They will pay to us $1,000 per course for the first year of the training program. If the memorandum of understanding is renewed for future years, there's a clause that it would automatically increase 3% annually. The college will be responsible for any negligence or intentional acts that may cause anybody any danger and injury, and it also requires the college to obtain and maintain general liability insurance that would include the town as an additional insured. Anne Marie, is there anything else you think is a highlight of
Yes, sir.
that particular?
And I'm sorry, I probably wasn't clear in the agenda review memo, but originally it was agreed for $1,000 per course, but we're asking that the council amend that because the trustees asked that they asked that the council not charge a fee, but we have to charge a fee because of the grant requirements that we adhere to at the airport. But they're trying to grow the program. It's still in its infancy, and in order to help the college and to help the program grow, I recommend that instead of the $1,000 per course, you drop it down to $250 per course and keep it there for the next 3 years. That will give the college time to try and build their marketing and recruitment program. They've also encountered some challenges in being able to enroll students due to COVID-19 impacts, especially at the DMV office. I understand that students have to get a special license even to take the class, and with DMV being so backlogged, they've not been able to attract as many students in a timely manner. So we're asking to amend the agreement as presented.
Thank you for pointing that out, Anne Marie. Does anybody have any huge objection to that reduction in the fee? I know I have a number of clients that have gone into truck driving, and a lot of those clients have not had the best of work histories and have fallen in love with it, and they're making really, really good money and doing well for themselves.
It's good to hear.
And I've seen firsthand what that type of program can do for people, and so I'm in favor of it just from a personal and professional standpoint.
Such an excellent program, I mean, really.
I want to thank former Commissioner Chairman Patricia Percy for actually getting this going. This is what, about a year ago, 2 years ago?
I think we've just completed this we're in the second term, but former Commissioner Percy is the chairman of the College Board of Trustees, and I think it's the first time that the COA has ever had a chair from Chowan County, so she's terrific, and she's been a big advocate for this program and other workforce development training programs.
I'm glad to hear she's chairman.
So will we have another document to consider on July 13th, another memorandum of understanding or a lease or something?
And I'm sorry, I didn't mark it appropriately. I just gave you a copy of the existing one, but we'll update it.
Okay, all right. With that, I would just recommend that we recommend approval of the memorandum of understanding with the changes that have been discussed tonight. And Mayor, that concludes the agenda items for the administrative committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hyde. The next is our utilities committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Bond.
Yes, sir. Electric distribution system upgrade. There's my main man right there, Mr. Mike, gonna take care of that for me.
Pop right in there, huh?
Pop right in, I'll be right on time.
Right on cue.
Thank you.
Hey, Mayor, council members, and communities. Really want to just talk about a few things, the way we're allocating our funding for budget.
and some of the improvements we've made and what we intend to make moving forward. A quick introduction to the thing is, you know, we've spent a lot of money on tree trimming. That's very integral to keep the power on. It helps us during times of hurricanes or inclement weather to keep our outages down, which I think we're gaining on that. We also spent a lot of money on new electric meters, new advanced electric meters that are solid state without moving parts, so that the two items that we have are revenue generating is the electric meters and the lighting. And we've gone a long way, and if you've been around town, you see a lot of new LED applications of lights. To date this year alone, in the first 6 months, we've replaced 145 of the existing lights with the new LED lights. And I think that most of the community areas and some of our costs are going down due to the savings from the LED and the longevity of the lights and the cost. We've done some modification to existing lights to keep the cost down and not have to buy specific LED lights. Most of the time, you know, we're changing poles out, we're upgrading everything on the pole at the time. What you've seen before in the past is we had a lot of issues with when something would happen, a squirrel or something would interfere with the electric system, your lights would blink. We've changed some settings on our breakers. We've changed our fuse types wholesale to make it so that that fuse is quicker and it keeps the lights from blinking overall through the whole system. So what it does is it's inconvenience you having to reset your clocks or have something happen with your lights. That's, for the most part, gone. We're still going to have them because those squirrels are still going to be out there and they're going to get into an area that we may not have enough protection, but we're working on that as well. The first slide I have here, this is a picture of what we have. This is at the airport, and this is a gang switch. This is some of the devices that we have in the system now. I'm going to show you some, the reason I'm showing you these are what we have existing. I'm going to show you some of the things potentially we're going to go to. It's been difficult this calendar year or this fiscal year to get materials. Lead times are extremely long, costs are extremely high, and we've just had a difficult time getting resources or getting our materials, and we need to make these changes, but they are coming. And then, who's got, oh, you got it. Okay. That circle right there is at the airport. That is evidence of a failure of that switch. We opened that switch during an outage. We were working on having a problem. This is the problem that you have when you have an open air. It's called a gang switch, an air brake switch. This is part of the problem. If it's not operated routinely or pretty often, it gets corroded, it gets locked in, and when it opens, it doesn't make a clear break. If you look at the outside two portions of the switches on the outsides, they've got a plastic chute that keeps it from, that makes it break the arc. Okay, thank you. This is a different kind of air brake switch. We also have these in our system. The key to these are they have to be operated. This one's open, so you can open and close the switch if we make ready for it and operate the switch. The ones that are very difficult to operate are the ones that are normally closed that you don't want to open because people obviously lose their power. Okay, these are the devices that we're working towards and we're moving towards. We've bought single phase oil reclosers. What that is a switch that goes, instead of having a fuse that opens up the first time something happens, it actually is like your breaker in your house. That will single phase and three phase, and the vacuum recloser will actually open and then it will close. Then if the interference is still there, it will do the same thing. On the third time, it will open and stay open. So this is a fault clearing device that's out there. The vacuum I'm especially fond of because there's no oil, there's no really not much maintenance to them at all, and they last for a long time. Next one, please. This is the newest, one of the newest ones. We do have some of these. This is called a trip saver. This is the same as an oil switch, except it goes in a cutout. And that porcelain part up at the top right-hand side is what we normally have our fuse holders in. You can actually take a fuse holder out, put this device in, program it for whatever amperage you need it, and it operates the same as a recloser with reasonably priced comparatively. So when you have your outages, won't just open the fuse out and you're sitting in the dark until we go back out and people get to put the fuse back in. So what it does do is it allows that fault, one-time interference of a squirrel, to clear itself, then it closes back in. So it eliminates the outage, eliminates the rolling of the truck. It makes things more consistent for people, and especially when you have long lines that feed a lot of area, there's a lot of potential for external things to get and cause problems. Trees and squirrels and birds and just about everything that can happen usually happens.
Are squirrels a major problem here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Squirrels are terrible to, I mean, there's no way to keep away from them, but they take care of themselves when they get in our stuff, so they don't usually, they're not repeat offenders. How's that? They're not repeat offenders. We get one and done. So, yeah. But yeah, they are bad, and especially certain times of the year you'll see them in the fall and the spring. A lot of things going on with the squirrel population, and they are absolutely up and down. And they'll even chew our wire in the wintertime. Sometimes if it's warming up and they're out running around, they'll chew on a piece of house service wire. And I don't know whether it's a thing for their teeth or something with the aluminum, but they like it. I don't know why. I guess they have a taste for it, so.
Maybe I forgot it, but did you ever get the high-rise bucket?
Yes, we did. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We got our bucket and it's performing splendidly. Can we buy another one? I'm ready to get another one if we can get one. No, not yet. Okay. Well, you gotta ask, don't you?
But you're getting a pole trail, aren't you?
Yes, sir. We're coming to that.
Okay.
That's another. Okay. This I said this, mentioned it before. This is an air brake. GoAb is a gang switch. It's a gang operated air brake. It's just a trade name for it. But these are commonly used. We're going to try to replace these with some of those vacuum switches and make them so that we don't have to worry about opening, closing, and actually what they call exercising a switch to keep the mechanisms, lined up. A lot of times with those arms that come down, this is operated from the ground, they become out of adjustment and the linkage hangs up and they're very difficult to open if they do even open. So this is part of our direction we're heading in. This is the newest type switch. This is an elastomobile switch. It's a completely vacuum operated switch. You have two different kinds of these. You can put one of these switches which have a current sensing and they will actually open up. This is preferable for when you have an underground service coming off of an overhead. For instance, I'll use the hospital. Biden Hospital, in the rear of that, we have 300 amp fuses in cutouts, open air. Pretty significant. You can put one of these up, plug all three of them into it, and have one switch handle them all at the same time. So this is part of the upgrades, and Biden is very eager to buy one, which they're going to pay for, and have us install it. So this is one of the newer devices. This can be put about any place. And it actually can be in place of the overhead stuff as well with a bushing on it. So that's one of the new ones. Okay. This is what I was just describing. It comes off the overhead, comes down into the switch mounted on the pole, and the cable comes off of it. And what that does is it allows it to all three be operated at the same time. And if it sees a fault on any one of them, it'll open all three of them so you're not adversely affecting your pad mount transformer. Okay. This is what happens when an air brake switch doesn't open properly. That is a pretty significant arc, and they melt and then you replace the whole switch.
because you don't get to put pieces on them. It all goes together as one unit. Okay, Tim? This is what happens when their switch in the substation faults. I just put these couple pictures up just to kind of show you how big that's probably about a 25-foot ball of fire when it's all said and done. All right, here's what the question we're asking. This is a pole trailer, wire trailer, wire cart. Significance of this is our wire carts we have now are just regular simple axles. They don't have the weight rating to carry the big cables, and this particular device or piece of unit has a brake on it. Right now, you either, when you're pulling the cable or pulling wire, you stop it with your hands, a pair of leather gloves, or you put a piece of cross arm against the arm or against the reel to slow it down. This has an adjustable brake that you can actually adjust it, and which will allow us to pull wire under tension over roads without having it sag down and back up. So we're gonna look to use this as part of our next improvements. Are going to be putting fiber optic into some places around town that we need it, and this will help us keep that protected from being down and interfering with traffic or pedestrians. And then this is the pole trailer. The pole trailer, the significance of this is right now we put poles on the side of the truck. Not a good idea, hasn't been a good idea, but it's been done for a long time. When you could put 2 poles on a truck to take it out, if we've got 6 poles to set, we can take 6 poles at one time. Now that allows us to bring back the old pieces that are going to be cut up on the same trailer to bring them back, so we're not making extra trips and having to utilize, the time to do it. That's the purpose of that. And that trailer right there will hold about 12 poles. You can put 12 poles on that. So they're pretty, the key to setting poles on there is you have to put them on balance. You can pick the tongue up by hand when you got the poles set up right. So it's just it will be an asset to have. We borrowed one, I'll give you an example, we borrowed one on the last time we had a problem with that hailstorm. We borrowed one from one of our neighbor utilities, and they graciously brought it to help us get the number. We needed 7 poles to get the number of poles out there, so we didn't have to go back and forth, because it was pretty treacherous there for a while after the ice was there. I think that's it, Tammy. That's it. Anybody have any questions or?
I understand you're asking for a pole trailer and a wire.
A wire cart, yes, sir. It's a wire, it holds a wire reel, and that's multiple that can hold any type of wire we have, and it's adjustable for different size reels. So one size does it all, so we can use it for everything.
Mine is the cost, I can't remember the cost.
Mike, do you remember how much money you put in the budget?
I think 20,000 for that. But that was again, at the time, I had looked at several different options. It may not be that much, depending on the specifics we get. That one had an automatic hydraulic loader that you could just roll the cart down, open the back of it up, roll the reel over to it, put the rod in, and you can use the hydraulics to pick it up to get it on the stand. The other ones, basic ones, you have to pick it up to the truck and put the roller rod through it. So there's some options there. I haven't arrived at exactly which one yet, but we're still looking. We're going to get the best deal we can. I want to get a decent one that's going to last a long time for sure.
Thank you, Mike, for that update.
You're welcome.
Good
Thank you.
information.
Thank you.
Man, that's gonna do me.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next committee is the Finance Committee. That's normally chaired by Councilman Dixon, but in his absence, we'll call on Councilman Coleman to.
Thank you. One important item, as Ms. Knight explained earlier when she was presenting the budget, we're receiving FEMA funds to repair 5 of the wave break panels that protect break the waves from coming into the bulkhead. We have 10, and 5 of them are deteriorating, as I understand. It would be a lot cheaper now to go ahead and fix those other 5. And the cost would be, I think, around $118,000 to do that in addition to the $138,000. Also, we are receiving FEMA funds for the Sunfish Park bulkhead, $54,675. And the bid came in at over $64,000, so there's about a $9,500 shortage there that we would need to pick up to do that work. In addition, major deterioration on the pier and the boat slips and the docks, and we're looking at getting that repaired also to fix up the waterfront. That would be about $116,000. So what staff is proposing and requesting that the council consider for its next meeting is that we take approximately $243,000, $491, out of our general fund balance, and use that to go along with the $215,000 in FEMA funds to thoroughly fix up our waterfront, to make the dock area safe, to fix up the Sailfish Park. And I think, has the work already been done on the cannon strip?
Yes,
That's been done. So that gives us a major investment and the major asset we have in this community, and that's the beauty of our waterfront. So we recommend that the full council consider this expenditure at its July meeting.
Thank you,
Any
sir.
questions on that? Is that all right?
You did good.
Any questions or comments about that? If not, our next committee is Public Works, and that's chaired by Councilman Miller.
Mayor, we got 4 items. Out of the 4, 3 are bid awards, and the 4th item is an easement issue. First one, bid award, replacing the wave break panels on the breakwater. WAF Contracting submitted the lowest bid of $136,752 for the 5 broken wave break panels. To replace the 5 remaining stress panels, we had another $118,000 for a total cost of $254,752. Public Works Committee would like to forward this bid award to full council at July 13th meeting. Second item is the bid award replacement of pier and boat slips at Edenton Harbor. WAF Contracting submitted the lowest bid at $115,911. Public Works Committee would like to forward this bid award to full council. Third item, again, replacement of bulkhead at boat basin at Sunfish Park. Again, WAF Contracting submitted the lowest bid at $64,252, which includes backfilling with stone instead of dirt. And Public Works Committee would like to move this on to full council at the July 13th meeting. Final item, approval of easements requested by North Carolina Department of Transportation for the project to replace Bolton's Bridge. In regards to the Bolton Bridge replacement project, NCDOT is requesting easements for the project in order to relocate electric utility poles. DOT needs a permanent utility easement, a drainage easement, and a temporary construction easement to support the project. DOT only needs a very small amount of land as part of the wastewater treatment plant. DOT values this easement at $295. According to our town manager and our public works director, the easements will not impact the wastewater treatment plant. Public Works Committee recommends forwarding the approval of easement request to full council at the July 13th meeting. That's it, Mayor. That's all we
Okay,
have.
thank you, sir. Anything related for reason?
Bud has been assisting Corey with the coordination and the bidding of the infrastructure project. So in case you had any questions because I asked him a million questions when I was preparing the agenda review memo, but he's been terrific in helping us.
Was it just WAF and TJ Marine doing the bidding? Was there anyone else?
No, just them two.
Just those two?
And they were very competitive.
Yeah, I know.
All right, that concludes our committee reports. Anybody else have anything else they want to talk about before y'all to deal with me?
You know, when he said that loud voice that you could hear, I was thinking about my wife. I said, Dad, tell her to be quiet.
Okay, that concludes our committee meeting, so meeting adjourned.